Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, president of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter, join our Founders Campaign, and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within. Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, May 26th, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Pam Fitch. For close to 40 years, Canadian massage therapy educator, writer, researcher, and longtime practitioner Pamela Fitch has explored professional, ethical, and communicative challenges faced by manual therapists. She remains particularly interested in how massage therapy affects clients who have experienced trauma, post-traumatic stress, and complex pain conditions. A committed educator, she has been recognized with several awards for teaching. Her workshops explore ethical challenges, the massage therapeutic relationship, massage therapy and trauma, and the treatment of scars, and she is presented widely across Canada, the United States, and beyond. Pam brings humor, openness, and comfort in the moment to her presentations, able to pivot between lecture, small and large group discussions, while thoughtfully responding to participant questions. Pam's dedication to transparent communication, integrity, and respect ensure that even large groups feel cohesive and connected. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah.
I'm looking so forward to this conversation and just ready to dive right into it. We like to start with our guest's background. So tell me what initially drew you to massage therapy.
Korea, I have a story that I always tell when people ask me this. I am Canadian, but I don't live in Toronto, the most recognizable city for Americans, perhaps. But you may know about the CN Tower in Toronto. And when it was constructed, it was the tallest building in Toronto. It might have been in the world. I don't know. I don't know the history there. But anyway, I have vertigo. So I had to do a presentation in Toronto, and this is back in the 80s, and I did not know where to make this presentation work. So on someone's recommendation, we made the event happen at the CN Tower, at the top of the CN Tower. And I kind of knew I had vertigo, but until I got into the elevator of the CN Tower, I didn't really appreciate how freaked out I was going to be. So I left bruises on the arm of the person standing beside me who worked with me because I was just like, going up to the top of the CN Tower. And then, of course, I'm leaning on the bar, which is in the central part of it, because I was pretty sure that if I walked on the glass floor or over to the window, the whole place would topple. Yeah. Anyway, I did this presentation, came down, and I thought, if I survive this presentation, there's a massage therapist that works at the hotel I'm staying at. I'm going for a massage. That was 1984.
Okay.
So I went into the hotel afterwards. I survived. I went into the hotel afterwards and asked if there was a massage therapist available. This amazingly quiet, centered, calm woman named Faye drew me into the massage treatment room, which was nicely darkened with a few small lamps. And she was very soft spoken and she explained how I could get on the table. And I was a bundle of nerves after this presentation. And I just laid there and I got calmer and calmer. And suddenly my monkey brain said, I could do this. Oh, I could really do this. This is the purest communication I could imagine. I had always my whole life been fascinated with communication
Mm.
and performance. I was in music a lot at the time. And so as I'm lying there and my body is somewhat calm, my mind is immediately thinking, I could do this, I could do this. This is what I could do. This is, it was very obvious from that first moment that her energy, Faye's energy, and mine were intersecting, and her capacity to help me calm myself was like, in my opinion, the greatest gift I could imagine. So it was like a lightning bolt moment for me. I became a massage therapist in my mind at that moment. And by the time it took me a little time to get my money together so I could afford to go to school. So it was 2 years before I could actually start my training. But from that moment in Toronto till now, I pretty much deeply identify with that role as a massage therapist. It's never wavered. It's really been interesting. It's kind of like a vocation, that's what I want to do.
Let me ask you then, Pam, that was your first interaction with massage therapy?
Mhm. Back then, people were starting to talk about complementary and alternative healthcare. There were a few massage therapists in my city. I was aware of it as a practice, but I had never experienced a massage until that moment, and that was just such a gift.
Gotcha. I'm just curious, did you ever see Faye again?
Never.
Really?
Never. And she had been in practice for years at the time, working in a hotel. You know what it's like. People who work in hotels, you'll see somebody one time and never see them again.
Right.
So I don't know where she went to, but I know that she remained in the profession for many years, and I always credit her with just transforming my life.
It's amazing how little moments like that and people who have no idea what part they're playing in the big
Yeah,
picture. I love
yeah.
that. It's a great story. Thanks, Pam. Talk to me, and especially like listeners who are in the United States who maybe are somewhat ignorant, talk to me about the training process. And I'm sure it's changed since 1986, but the training process to become a massage therapist.
Oh, sure. When I first decided to become a massage therapist, all of the programs here in my province and in the country were delivered in private vocational schools or private schools. So I trained in a private vocational school, just like many of your American counterparts. At the time, back in the 80s, we were counting our capacity to do the work in hours,
Mhm.
and that has changed dramatically. So we got to a point as a country where there was a sort of an understanding in each province that is regulated that 2,500 hours was the expected number of hours to get all the training that you needed. And then I worked on a group of educators, worked with a group of educators where we were determining what the competencies were. So we moved away from counting hours and we moved to a competency-based educational framework. So the competencies, I think there's 333 competencies, and there are 4 or 5 performance indicators that prove that you can do that competency. And this document of competencies and performance indicators is now the template for how massage therapy training is developed, and the curriculum must abide by this competency document. So we've gone a long away from hours into competencies. But let me just say, and I always say this when I'm teaching in the US, my experience of American massage therapists is that you may have shorter programs than we do, but I have never felt that American massage therapists are less well trained because in my experience, people might take a program that is short, but then their motivation to continue their learning is long. And they're taking this course and that course and another course and reading and part of study groups and that kind of thing. And frankly, I don't think Canadians have that commitment to lifelong learning as well as the Americans do. Some do, but it's not common. I think if you were to scratch the surface of a bunch of Canadian massage therapists, they would tell you that they have been trained, they graduated, now they're in practice. Some of them will continue with courses, but the American therapists are deeply committed to lifelong learning. So I've always been really amazed at that difference between our two cultures.
That's quite the compliment. I find it a little bit hard to believe.
Well, there's the whole free market thing, right? Where we trademark certain techniques, and have a hard time with that approach to things. The Pam Fitch technique to communication. Give me a break. People have been communicating a lot longer than I've been on the planet. And in massage therapy, some of the things that people would say they have discovered have probably been done for thousands of years as well. So the trademarking had a problem with that. But the lifelong learning commitment, certainly the people I've met at national conferences, they're remarkable. Yeah.
I appreciate that perspective, Pam, but it does bring up another question for me. Are continuing education hours or competencies required? Are they a mandate in Canada?
Oh, that's a thorny little issue. I practice in a regulated province, which means that we have a regulatory body, just like physicians and nurses and dental hygienists and psychologists. We're in under the same healthcare legislation. So up until probably about, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago, there was a tracking of continuing education hours, and we had to prove what we were learning. Now, what we do is we submit a learning plan to our college, our regulatory body, and say, I want to learn this. And they just keep track of it. But frankly, in the regulatory body in my province, there's more than 16,000 massage therapists in Ontario. So the College of Massage Therapists of Ontario is basically saying, you got to be committed. You got to do this work yourself. We cannot verify every single person, 16,000 people every year. We're not going to do that. They've gone away from tracking those hours and more to a system where they will flag concerning behaviors if they hear about them, or if you don't fulfill your requirements as a registered massage therapist in Ontario, if you miss deadlines or you don't complete this survey or whatever is required, those become sort of little yellow flags. And then if they receive a complaint about you, then that's a little red flag. And they will verify those things, absolutely. But I was just at a presentation last week given by the registrar of the college in tandem with the CEO of our provincial association. And obviously, the provincial association is representing members, the registrar is protecting the public. But they were making this presentation together, and Maureen Boone, our registrar, said, we have 16,000 plus members. We receive about 140 complaints. That's a very small percentage. Most massage therapists, and this is my experience when I've been teaching, most massage therapists get what we do and they feel deeply committed to the integrity that the role demands. But
Right.
there are some people who are not paying attention. There are some people who are actually malevolently trying to use their role to manipulate, but very, very small percentage. So back to your question, we don't necessarily track hours, but there's a recognition that every massage therapist has a slightly different interest based on our practice, our personal interests, that kind of thing. And learning goes in a whole weave of patterns, right? So one year I might be interested in how regulatory bodies ensure the education of postgraduate individuals. The next year, I might be interested because somebody's doing an anatomical tour, like Gil Headley did the nerve tour, and I went to his presentation last year, and I went, I haven't studied anything to do with anatomy since the 80s, but I didn't want to miss that, right? Both things have equal weight when it comes to learning, because if you're committed to lifelong learning as a massage therapist, you just want to learn everything about the profession. So my where I am in Canada and the other regulatory bodies are like this. We're encouraging people to continue their lifelong learning, but recognizing that from a regulatory body, it's difficult to create oversight for that.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, that does open kind of a can of worms for us, doesn't it? Does I imagine that it's practitioners that make up the college, the regulatory agency for massage therapy.
The way it's structured is this. A majority of council members on the regulatory body are professional members. Don't quote me here, but I think there's 9 professional members and 5 members of the public
Gotcha.
who are appointed by the government.
Okay.
So the members of the public are represented, but the majority of people on the council are professional members. And then there are a series of committees which both members of the profession and members of the public will be represented on as well. Investigations and complaints, registration, quality assurance. These are the typical major parts of the triad of what they do.
And then also, I'm not sure I've ever done this, kind of compare notes between registered massage therapist, RMTs in Canada, and licensed massage therapists and LMTs. Do you see a huge difference between the license and the registration?
Well, I have to admit my ignorance of how people are registered or licensed in the US. My understanding is some of the national organizations, there's a national exam, people have to meet certain bars or certain points of competency, and that is very similar. What is on the exam in one jurisdiction may be slightly different in the other. But I just want to bring it back to the most basic common denominator, and that is when you become registered or acknowledged by a public body that you can do this work. What happens is we become accountable to the public.
Mm,
So from that perspective and my limited exposure to practicing American massage therapists, the ones that end up in my classes, they are remarkable individuals, and not to say that they're remarkable because I'm teaching. They're in the class, and I am amazed by their perspective and awareness. Obviously, if somebody is so committed to the profession that they're attending national events, there's a level of awareness of how massage therapy is delivered that you might not get for somebody who's just been registered and not attended any, they don't have any sense of their larger the realities of their profession. But my exposure to massage therapists in the US is that from a behavioral point of view, from values, from their capacity to communicate, their commitment to lifelong learning, probably no difference, even though we have a longer training period.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Pam, I just can't resist this question either. Is it hard to go from clock hours to competency based?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do you have
Very, very hard. That was a very big culture shift for the profession. And still to this day, there are massage therapists who will talk about, well, I've done so and so number of hours on this, that, or the other thing. Or people who are providing continuing ed programs will say 16 hours of training. And as an educator, it became very clear to me when I did my master's in adult education, and there's a lot of perspective in that discipline, which talks about what are we trying to accomplish? So the idea is, what's the outcome? If I'm doing a 2-day course on trauma-informed care, it doesn't matter whether we do 16 hours or 27 hours. The most important thing is, do the people walk out of that workshop with a sense of clarity about what is trauma-informed care, and what are the implications for me as a therapist? So when you are starting to teach that way, you recognize, oh, the hours don't matter. They don't matter. It is all about what are the outcomes and have we fulfilled the outcomes? And when you teach that way, the hours are not important. But I can tell you that they're still talked about to this day in Canada, even though they're not required and they're not tracked.
It's a little hard for me to wrap my head around, I'll admit, but it sounds like it'd be harder to assess or track or validate the competencies. Have you found that to be the case?
Well, it depends. Do you depend on your practitioners to be adults who can self-assess and determine whether they know something or not?
No.
So I'll go back. I did a training in Arkansas actually many years ago. I taught a breast massage therapy clinic in Arkansas. I can't remember whether Arkansas had at that time. I don't think Arkansas had a rule, but Texas had a rule. There were a couple of states who actually had rules where you could not touch breast tissue. But here we were, Deborah Curtis and I. Deborah wrote the book on breast massage, and she and I co-presented in Arkansas to a bunch of people who wanted to learn how to do breast massage, because there's for women who experience breast pain or who have had mastectomy or there's scarring or they've had breast reductions or breast augmentations. There's all kinds of reasons why we should talk about the breast. But there were people there who were quite uncomfortable with it. However, we just went ahead and taught like we would normally do. And by the end of that 2-day session, no exam was going to tell me whether or not people had fulfilled their hours. But what I noticed was the practitioners, the participants, were more comfortable talking about this technique, this approach to care. They were better able to ask good questions of their client, so to speak, their colleagues that were acting as clients. And their hands-on techniques were much more confident. I'm not, if I'm going to teach a workshop, I don't want to have to examine people at the end of it. I want them to all be adults and let me know if they're having problems, which is my experience. So, do I think that, I'm not sure the question behind the question, Kirby, but if you're asking me, does there need to be that kind of oversight from people providing courses? I'm not sure it's practical to expect that. But if people are explicit on what their learning outcomes are for a particular workshop, it's up to me as a practitioner whether or not people succeed in that. That's where the buck stops with me. Have I done a good job? And if I feel like at the end of it, everybody seems to have gotten the point, okay, then I can go home and they take those skills back to their practice and then try working them into their professional life. But I don't think it's practical to try to create exams. It gets weird. But that could be me speaking from my very specific point of view here in Ontario. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and maybe the reason that I brush up against it so much, perhaps I can blame it on the American culture where we're so litigious and
Yes.
we want to play policeman so often. So, I think about, well, that's great. I wish we could trust everybody to, speak up when they're not getting it and where they need help and additional
Yeah.
resources. But there are so many people who will just skate by. I think about the
Yeah.
lowest common denominator and who
Yep.
would really take advantage of a system like that. Has
Yeah.
that been an issue, Pam, that you've seen in the Canadian switch to competency based?
Well, there again, you see, you have an oversight which is government related. So if the oversight is, there's a legal imperative for accountability to the public, the difference between a massage practitioner as opposed to a massage therapist, a registered massage therapist, is that the registered massage therapist in my jurisdiction has a set of standards and a code of ethics, and they must abide by those. And if a member of the public feels like I have done a bad job, they can make a complaint about me, and it gets very messy and very costly for me. So the onus for massage therapists to meet the bar of accountability that's a big impetus. When it's a private kind of situation where someone is taking a course, I don't mean to make examples of people, but back in the day I did training in craniosacral therapy. Well, craniosacral therapy is extraordinarily effective as an indirect fascial technique and can sometimes help patients or clients access really deep states of awareness of things that have happened to them. If I have a weekend of training in that and no perspective of the potential for me to do harm by taking a client further down a road than they're prepared to go, there's no option for that member of the public. There's no place for them to take that complaint. And the potential of harm is great. So that's an example of how I think we really do need to take care of the public, and a regulatory body helps. It's not a perfect system, but it helps. But when there's no system and no way for the public to make a complaint or have the complaint heard or registered, the public is vulnerable and the massage therapist is not accountable. And I think that's a problem.
Let me ask, this might be my last to close this out, Pam, but I'm going to ask you to opine just a bit. Do you feel that that switch from hours-based to competency-based education has been a positive or a beneficial thing, or something that is worth exploring?
I think it's been extremely positive, and it depends. The entire system depends on people treating themselves as adults and responsible. That's it.
Has that been the switch to competency-based? Has that been across Canada, or has that just been province by province?
It's so that's a big question, Kirby. In Canada, our healthcare policies are created federally, but the delivery of healthcare is provincial and independently provincial. So what happens in BC is not what happens in Alberta. Very different culture, very different kind of environment. BC, Ontario, PEI, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland are the 5 provinces which are regulated. We have another province in the West, Manitoba, which is just about to become regulated. So we're almost there. But in a province that isn't regulated, there's not the same oversight. But the provinces which are regulated are all participating in a group called FOMTRAC. It's a federation of regulatory bodies, and they all agree on the same sort of standards. So in the regulatory provinces, the regulated provinces, it's the same.
Cool. All right. Tell me a little bit more. We're going to go way back to the beginning of
Okay.
this conversation. Talk to me about your initial massage therapy training. Tell me about your instructors, texts that were used in instruction. Give me an overall sense of how that played out.
Massage therapy in Ontario has been part of a culture of instruction since 1919.
Wow.
Yeah, probably the influx of immigrations after the First World War
Mm.
brought a lot of Eastern Europeans into a particular area in Ontario called Kitchener-Waterloo. And the Kitchener-Waterloo region had a huge, high preponderance of German, East European, Polish, Romanian individuals. And the culture in Eastern Europe at the time was, you have a problem, you have a sore back, you go get a massage. So massage therapy was part of Ontario for more than 100 years. We had a provincial association from 1923, and it went through a variety of different names and iterations, but it was the same organization. So when I began learning in 1986, our textbooks, oh my goodness, were the Hoppenfeld and Moore, and we had Tidy's Massage. That's an old 1940s massage therapy textbook that was used by physiotherapists, of course. So a lot of massage therapy training in my background was very oriented towards orthopedic recovery. We had chiropractors and physio as our teachers. We also had massage therapists with a lot of practice experience. I studied in a small school that had roughly, I had 35 in my class when we first started. I can't remember, maybe 21 graduated. It was an 18-month program. There again, the hours, right? But 18 months was pretty comprehensive because for most every day, Monday to Friday, we would start at 8 or 8:30. And if there was student clinic, you could be working till 7. If we didn't have student clinic, we went till 4. So it was a very full day every day for 18 months. So that was the nature of my training, very experiential. Hydrotherapy was fascinating. We were doing old Knipe techniques like cold water effusions.
Uh-huh.
Not my favorite.
Right.
There were a number of experiences that were odd, and we had a huge focus on outreach. So, this was, in my experience, the best part of my training. So, in my outreach, for example, I was sent to an apartment complex that worked with people who were living in a sheltered kind of way. And my client for 7 weeks was somebody who had MS and he'd been in the prison system. He was a heavy smoker.
Mhm.
There I am, little Pammy Fitch from down the street going in and just like, ew, you need to have a smoker and I don't know what to do. And I had a supervisor that we were 7 students and we each had a client and we would go into their apartments to work and she would come in and help us.
Mhm.
And that 7 weeks, I learned to see the human behind the initial reactions that I had. So my colonial white settler kind of perspective was challenged dramatically
Mhm.
by this guy. And by the end of the 7 weeks, he was telling me jokes, and I was like, yeah, that just kind of got how hard his life was and how precious this 1 hour of massage was.
Mhm.
I had a client who was profoundly deaf and had difficulty communicating. My father was deaf, but he learned to speak before he became deaf, so he could speak. But this person was deaf, and I couldn't understand her. And the funniest story about that was that I worked with her in her apartment, and I just felt so incompetent. I didn't know what to do. She was in a wheelchair, and she was deaf, and nothing I did seemed to make her happy. And eventually, the last week I saw her, I finally understood her to say that Noreen, the previous student that she'd had working with her, was way better than I was.
Oh no.
But that outreach experience, that real connection with people who otherwise could not receive massage, that was just the most precious part of what I did. And that really helped me translate. Once I got into prime practice, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to make it happen because the only people that get massage are the ones that can afford it because there wasn't a lot of extended health coverage. However, the people I really wanted to work with were people who couldn't otherwise receive it. So that's a long, long odyssey to tell you that story.
It's a beautiful story though, and what I sit back and take from that is not everybody gets that. There are people who that's a very formative
Yeah.
experience and perspective for you to get at the start of your career. And there are people who will go their entire careers and never even get a glimpse of something like that, right?
Well, I mean, 3 weeks into my practice, I just started my practice. I had a little tiny room. It was so small, I had to step onto the radiator to get around the table because it was so small. And I had this woman come in to see me, and she was a heavy smoker, and she had a little piano stool with the seat of the stool is this big, and she was quite a large woman, and I'm thinking how inadequate this stool is for this client. And she said to me, I'm recovering alcoholic, cross addicted to pills and food, as you can see, and I can't stand to be touched, and I want to be touched. That was 3 weeks into
No
I
pressure.
just opened the door, like, oh, I know how to fix a knee and make your headache go away, but I have no idea what to do with this.
Yeah.
And that was the first realization that massage therapy had an application here, but I didn't know what it was, so I had to figure it out. Training didn't prepare me for that, but that's what I ended up doing.
I can't help but ask the question, do you feel like sometimes there's too much of a heavy emphasis front loaded onto orthopedic and, fixing the somatic issues of the body as compared to these are real people with things like, where does addiction and communication styles, where does that fit in with massage?
I didn't pay you to ask me that question, did I, Kirby?
No.
Yes, the answer is yes. I think wholeheartedly the research has been very clear that what we can take to the bank is that massage therapy is helpful with alleviating depression, improving sleep, and improving mood. We know that. And yet we're still focused on the shoulder, the knee, the hip. Not to say that those things can't be helped by massage, but I question whether what we're doing is necessarily helping the shoulder, the hip, and the knee, or are we facilitating our clients getting into a calmer state of being so that their own internal forces of healing take over and they're better equipped for their tissues to resolve in whatever the issue is. If our minds are calm, we're in a better place to heal. But that is a much more challenging topic for educators to explain, to teach, to imbue, or to inspire in our students. It's a lot easier to talk about the ACL, right?
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir right now, but it's also not only is it hard for educators to, provide that and talk about it, but it's also a much harder sell for our clients, the people who are coming in to work with us, right? They don't buy that initially. They don't get it. They don't have that refined sophistication understanding of the body and the research, right?
But I think that they don't have to. If a client comes in to see me and they've got a knee problem, well, then let's work on your knee. But the perspective and the wisdom and the context for working with the client, that's for me to own. And maybe I share it, maybe I don't. But that's where the integrity in our profession lies. Maybe if I spend time with you and your knee and I listen, and one day you say to me, you really listen well. Now we have an inroad. Now we can have that other conversation. It's not up to me to teach a client or insist that they acknowledge this other thing. But I do think that most of what we do is context. Most of what we do is context. Yeah.
Maybe this is as good a time as any for me to bring up, Pam. You've laid hints at it through this conversation so far about an interest in communication, even before massage therapy came on the radar for you. And you also have shared about your father's deafness. Is that kind of, I don't want to make assumptions, but is that an impetus for your interest in communication?
Do you know, I don't think anyone's ever put those two things together. It's possible. I probably was aware from a very young age that my dad was often left out of conversations because my dad had a great sense of humor. Today is his birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Dad.
Yeah, 110 years ago. Um, my dad had a great sense of humor and he loved physical humor. He would get the giggles and he just loved uh, physical comedians like Laurel and Hardy and Red Skelton and Dick Van Dyke. Loved these guys
Yeah.
because he could get the humor. But when people would tell a joke, they'd often tell a joke and then they'd throw away the punchline. And my dad, who loved humor, would miss it.
Yeah.
And I noticed those things a lot. So as he aged, I spent a lot of time, making sure that he got the joke, making sure that he got the last, he understood that. And I think it's maybe I can't say one is the impact of the other, but that awareness of other people's experience, that's been with me pretty much all my awareness. When I was doing music and musical theater years ago, the thing that made me most excited about being on stage was feeling like the audience got what I was doing. If I felt like they were sort of going, or, somehow reacting to what I was communicating, that was the best. And so when I went into massage therapy, it was a little bit like I had an audience of one. Oh, that is very rich. And I am, yeah, I'm a bit of a ham and I love to perform. So I would make clients laugh and I would then be able to draw into the laughter some awareness of the purpose of why I was doing such and such. So I don't know, I've just always been doing stuff like this. And when I recognize that people are living with pain, complex pain, trauma, any of these kinds of things, I recognize how hard it is to just navigate the world. So they're my peeps. They're the ones that I like to work with.
I'm wondering, perhaps I'm jumping the gun, but is there also a direct correlation from an interest in communication to the work that I see from your resume that you're doing with trauma-informed care?
Well, yes, because I I have to say I have learned my whole perspective on trauma has come from clients sharing story after story after story about not being heard or feeling a certain way and not really knowing where to take that feeling, right? So when you are a good communicator or you're focused on good communication, part of the skill is to be a good listener. And in working with that population of individuals living with the effects of trauma, literally the best thing I could do would just be to listen and let them tell their story. And then I would figure out how to navigate, how can I help in this story? So when I was a teacher, this was the value I was trying to impart to my students was basically, rather than telling a client what you can do for them, find out what they're looking for. That's fundamental. So yeah, that I would say that the whole need for good communication has been part of who I am all my life, but it became really full technicolor when I became a massage therapist and realized how important that listening skill was so that I could deliver the punchline so that their life could change. And the punchline might be something I do with my hands, but sometimes it's just listening and asking the right question.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, so many things come up to me hearing that. First of all, the thing that I'm thinking of is it's amazing to me how many of the people I've talked to, just in this series alone, but also, throughout my career, that have some sort of background in either theater, performance, musicianship. And I don't know, do you have anything that you could add to that, or is that we'll just let that go as a passing Kirby observation?
Oh, I think it's absolutely genuine. If you're on the stage, you are looking for cues. I'm not a good improv person. I'm not, I freeze if ever I'm in a situation, improv. But in performance and in my experiences on stage and in theater, you're always watching other people for cues, and they are so subtle that I couldn't even explain to you what I'm looking for. But it's like the quiver of an eyelash. It's the mouth slightly turning up where you think, oh, they got it. Or someone just chuckling or uh, recognizing that somebody is about to cry. These things enrich one's performance dramatically. They're like food for performers. But in massage therapy, it's what makes you a much more sensitive massage therapist. So again, audience of one, it's pretty, pretty powerful. Yeah, I love it.
I can tell. And I'm really appreciating what you're saying about the word listen. Because
Mm.
it sounds simple to tell someone, listen to your client, but listening also, there's so much nuance to it. Hearing them, processing it, thinking about what's underneath what they've told you, not making up stories, of course, but really
Mm.
trying to understand this client and who they are, but then also listening with your hands and
Yes.
watching what the body does and really feeling where that fine point of resistance and where you can hold and pause and the differences that you can do with your techniques, right?
The listening with your hands, that has been a phrase I've used many, many times because that's exactly what it feels like. I'm listening. It's the act of listening, but I'm using touch as the medium. It's hard to describe for somebody who doesn't know what that feels like, but that's absolutely correct. Yeah.
I've got to share with you something that I've started doing recently is I don't know if this is the same thing where you are, but I get clients that come in and they want to trash talk their bodies so badly or make excuses or apologize for their body. I start telling them, be careful. Your body is in the room with us. It's listening. Don't give it any excuses to pick up on negativity. So it's again, I guess what I'm trying to say is like also that feedback loop of your body is here and present with us, and be careful
Mhm.
what you say around it. Your mind is constantly listening to that
Mm.
subliminal stuff that you're presenting it, right? And it all plays into your health, I think.
Well, in my work with clients who have a history of trauma, there is a lot of trash talk going on in their heads. And so when I, as a massage therapist, might say something like, you're perfect just the way you are, you're doing the best you can. Let's just go with that. Most of us don't receive that message quite enough.
Right.
And it's gold, it's magic as a message. So I can say that. That's in my scope of practice. I can say that. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be a psychologist. I'm just saying, give yourself a break here. Holy doodle, people are really, really in need of hearing that. So, to your point, I agree with you.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, Kirby, that I might have a client come in to see me because their psychologist said, "Oh, you should go get a massage to relax." And massage may be the most difficult thing in the world for them to do based on their history, right? Or they may not trust me because I'm I'm a cisgendered woman who identifies with pronouns she, her, and if that individual had a mom who was scary, there's going to be a whole lot of mom issues to get over before they can hear me say, "You're doing the best you can." So I'm not a psychologist, but that communication of let's focus in the present, you're doing the best you can, you're perfect just the way you are. Oh my God, these are powerful statements. They're magic.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's such a privilege to be able to deliver them, right?
Oh, no kidding. What an honor. Um,
Yeah,
and how humbling also,
yeah.
because to wield that, wield maybe the wrong word, but to be the deliverer of that knowledge or that piece that you can help people navigate.
Well,
Yeah.
these times when people are so focused on nastiness, I'm so horrified by the lack of empathy that is being shown in our media and social media. Oh my goodness. So people are so defended. They're like crispy, trying to hold themselves together. And they come in and see me and they can just sort of go, bleh, oh, that feels amazing, right? This is such a gift. And I get to do it. I think I'll be doing this when I'm 85.
That's what I'm hoping too. I want to pick up on what you said there, this focus on nastiness that we have in our cultures. I have this theory that a lot of it starts internally,
Mm.
right? And I don't, and it manifests outside in so many ways.
Mhm.
That's my theory anyway, and what I'm working with. And maybe I'm getting a little bit too close into psychology's scope of practice, but yeah, the little part that I can play in helping people be aware or process through that, I think is incredibly an honor.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, but talk to me about the evolution from practitioner to educator.
I mean, how I got there?
Yeah.
One day when I was back in the 90s, I had, I started my practice at 1988. And within the first 3 years, you know what it's like. You're sort of hoping that nobody notices all the mistakes you make, and you're learning, even though there's no teachers around and there's no exams, but you're learning wholeheartedly what your practice is going to look like. And I think it was maybe 5 years in, I started to realize that pretty much every single treatment, every single interaction with a client was an educative opportunity where I could either share a breathing technique or what I was saying earlier, to take themselves off that hook and give themselves a break so they could be kind to themselves. And I started to identify as an educator around that time. And it was maybe about that point at which I started to provide continuing education courses, breast massage, scar work, trauma, communication, ethics. I've been teaching some of the ethics courses at the AMTA for a long time. And back to previous conversation, I mean, the AMTA requires that people take ethics courses every year to keep their certifications up, which totally amazes me. So, as an educator, I already knew the potential of what we do, but I didn't translate that into identifying as a formal educator because maybe it's the same in the US, but I was trained in a private vocational school, and you don't easily get into a college system to teach with that diploma.
Right.
And I had an undergrad degree, but usually they require a master's degree to teach in college. Um, so anyway, in the early 2000s, I was asked by a friend of mine if I would co-teach with him in a sixth term. That's a 3-year program in our community college where I live in Ottawa. And would I teach with him? So I thought, yeah, I can do that. Well, I know. Okay. So I realized that the students were hungry for the perspective that I had. Now, my perspective was not necessarily fully embraced by the orthopedic approach to the human condition, which was our program. But when there was a full-time faculty position, I applied for it, and to my astonishment, got the position. So now I was an educator in a formal sense. I still didn't have a master's degree. So I needed to do something about that. So I studied adult education and I learned. So I was a content expert. I was hired as a content expert in the program, but really with no formative training in education. And then I, in a backwards way, did the degree in education. So I would say now I identify as an educator. That is more, I'm always going to be a massage therapist, but I identify more as an educator now than anything else because I recognize that's kind of fundamental to what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost with every interaction we have, whether we're aware of it and whether we're good at it or not, we're doing some sort of education. And also, something else that I don't think people are aware of, some form of advocacy for the profession
Yes.
in every
Yes.
interaction that you're involved
Yeah,
in.
there are a number of times when I've had to advocate for motor vehicle accident clients by contacting the insurance company and saying, yeah, this person needs more care than their plan will provide. And I have done a little bit of advocacy on a political level with our regulatory body and our association, but it's been a long time since I've done that. But that also is a part of the role, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. And people just aren't aware of it. I don't know if they're taught that, in their entry level education that you're always an advocate and you're always an educator in some sense.
How do you, I'm turning the tables. How do you possibly do that when there is this enormous bolus of information that you have to deliver to the massage therapy student and have them identify as professionals? Wow. That is really, really hard because they can relate to the assessing the ACL,
Yeah.
but relating to themselves and identifying themselves as professionals, that usually takes a little time to
Sure.
develop. Yeah.
I I'll go in with you on that. Sure. Yeah, I think so. But gosh, I mean, I think it's so important to at least try and instill that, right? I don't know.
I was at this meeting last week with the registrar and the executive director for the association, and one of the schools locally had brought 25 students to that meeting. Well, those students are probably going to remember what happened in that meeting. They might not know the significance. They might not know why I was cheering because for many years those two bodies didn't get along. And now they're recognizing that there's a role for them to play by presenting their own perspectives, but doing it jointly. I was cheering. And those students are coming through their program right now thinking that's normal. I think that's progress. Does that help for people to become advocates for the profession? I'm not sure, but I can't think how else you're going to do it than to expose students to that kind of reality.
Yeah, absolutely. If nothing else, at least the seed has been planted, perhaps.
Yes.
Let's see. Maybe while we're kind of talking about education, is there a formative process to become a massage therapy educator in Canada?
I would say, unfortunately, no. We have, in my province, we have publicly funded colleges and we have private vocational schools.
Mhm.
The majority of massage therapy programs are delivered in private vocational schools,
Sure.
and many of them are doing an amazing job. And that was my experience when I went through in massage therapy. What you have with the publicly funded community college programs is a more nuanced educator perspective. There are more resources in a larger college, if you will, for the faculty to learn more about being educators. And I think it's really unfortunate, but it is a reality of our profession that people are hired like I was as a content expert without any formation.
Mm. Yeah.
When I was in my college, there was a training that you could do to become a better teacher. But that doesn't usually exist in private vocational schools. And unless somebody is a good communicator or a natural born educator, which there are some, becomes really, really hard to deliver your messages and have them embraced by the students. So some people are just naturally gifted that way. And when they are, they're fortunate to have teachers, or the students are very fortunate to have those teachers, but not every teacher has that ease in educating, and it becomes really challenging, especially if that educator is trying to teach challenging concepts like jurisprudence and the legalities of the profession and the value of advocacy. Oh my God. I can
Very-
imagine I'd be asleep if certain individuals were teaching that stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't sound so that perspective doesn't sound too dissimilar to what we have
Yeah.
here in the States as far as where there is some sort of formal process to become an educator. In my opinion, it could stand improvement where those do exist and where they don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I think that it would be worthy to invest in that as a profession,
Mhm. Mhm. Sure.
more
Yep.
education training for massage therapist educators. This also opens up, since we're talking about your education process, this opens me up to just ask perhaps selfish questions. Do you remember what time and where you were in Arkansas when you gave that breast massage training? I'm gonna put you on the spot, Pam.
I don't re I have a distinct recollection of being there. I remember the room. I remember the people I talked to. It was an amazing experience. No, I don't remember the town. I'm so sorry. That's
That's
embarrassing.
we
It
can.
was a long time ago. You can Google it. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if you think of it, send me an off camera, shoot me a message or something.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. What do you feel the importance of massage therapy history and the importance of looking into it and preserving it? Do you have any thoughts on that, Pam?
When I was taught about massage therapy, we were taught about Berling and we were taught about Swedish massage. And I thought in my ignorance, early in my training, I thought that it was all a sort of Northern European thing.
Hmm.
And in my ignorance, I hadn't expanded my worldview to realize that massage has been done probably since time immemorial. Because when you think about how people would take care of other people who are ill, one of the most intuitive things to do is to touch, rub, hold, contain, stroke, all of these things, which is part of what we do. So it wasn't until a few years into my training that I started to realize that Indigenous population had histories of massage, and the Hawaiian lomi lomi tradition was wonderful. And I thought, oh, that would be fascinating. And African individuals that I met realized that there was an African tradition. I met a missionary back in the late 90s who had been in India. I'm not sure where. She was working with the Santali people, I remember, and she was a missionary and she got very sick with flu. And they massaged her until she got better. And she was telling me this because she was a client at the time, and she said, this is all they could do. They had nothing, right? So as a profession, it would behoove us to recognize the deep integrity of what we do across societies. Patricia Benjamin did a remarkable text on massage therapy history, which I still refer to quite often. Robert Calvert did a history, and these things are not necessarily massage programs often think we don't have time to go into it, or they'll develop a 2-hour lecture, and that's the students have been vaccinated so that they know the history of massage therapy, right? I don't think that's enough, but I also believe that history is one of those things where it takes a profession to value their history in order for new practitioners to situate themselves within that history. And I don't think we do that very well on either side of the border.
Definitely. You bring up something interesting that maybe isn't a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, Pam. I want to know, because sometimes when I think of Canada, I do think of the rich Indigenous history that exists there. Do you find any sort of influence of the Indigenous cultures of Canada seeping into massage therapy, whether through regulation or practice, perception?
I think that there's a wider appreciation for Indigenous experience now than there used to be. Since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came up with their 96 recommendations in 2015, schools, governments across the country, churches, we've all been wrestling with what it means to develop reconciliation with our Indigenous siblings. Canada's history is long and racist with respect to Indigenous people. And we have a long way to go, but I can tell you that I was very fortunate 2 years ago to co-present with an Indigenous woman in Manitoba, where she was talking about the history of massage therapy and situating Indigenous practices in there, but also talking about the impact of residential schools on some of the people who would be our clients. So there's this, how would I say it? There's a seepage between the two realities, but our Indigenous siblings are not yet over the trauma of intergenerational trauma that they've experienced based on residential schools and the big colonial sweep and the 60s scoop and all these things that have happened. However, in Manitoba, they have an Indigenous premier who is leading and showing the most brilliant positivity around Indigenous issues. And so the massage therapists in Manitoba have permission and space to have these conversations. It's really exciting. It's a great time for us to be thinking about these things, but I wouldn't say that it's like common. You have to kind of go looking to have that awareness. But I think it's coming. I do hope it's coming. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love
Yeah.
it. That does sound like an exciting time.
Mm.
Let me ask you, do you have a collection of massage history then, Pam? Is there anything that you do to preserve at least the things that you've lived through, you've experienced, such as that?
Oh, that's a question that I have a hard time answering. I
Okay.
don't even know where to go with that, Kirby. But tell me more about what your intention is for that question.
I'm interested in if there are finding collections of massage history, because everybody has, or at least what I'm finding, there are little pockets of people who've collected things, documents, artifacts, stuff like that, and we don't know where they're at unless we ask. And then behind that question, if you do have any sort of collection like that, what sort of methods or plans or legacy do you have in mind?
Uh, I think the answer is, do I have anything? I have a couple of ancient books. One is an old physiotherapy textbook, another is, well, back in the day, 150 years ago, it was a thing for physicians to treat clients who were experiencing depression by by masturbating them.
Uh,
So I have sexual dysfunction textbooks too. But no, I have an interest, but I have not collected old books or papers or that kind of thing. And recently, my husband and I moved from our house to an apartment, and a lot of these papers, I didn't know where to take them, so they have been recycled.
See, that's also a problem that we come across. It's
Yeah.
okay. I was forgiven. You're not the only one.
Okay. Okay, good.
It is unfortunate, though. We would like to stop some of that bleeding. Uh,
Okay, well, I'll look through my stuff and see if I have anything I can share with you.
yeah, of course. Let me ask you then, perhaps keeping with this topic of history, what specific trends or changes in the profession have you witnessed? Or if I can ask you, this is maybe a new question that I'm coming up with on the fly. If you could pick one to three major influential changes that have taken place in your lifetime in massage therapy, could you name them?
I think probably the most important change has been the recognition that massage therapy research needs to be supported. And the International Journal of Massage Therapy and Bodywork has done a remarkable job of making massage therapy research available. There are some individuals in the US and also in Canada who have led the charge in that area. The implication for research in massage therapy has required that we learn how to ask good questions. Asking good questions is part of the skill of critical reflection. So it's all like a domino effect back to the fact, do we identify as professionals? Do we identify as service providers? And I think that's probably one of the biggest changes for me, because at the meeting that I attended last week, it was very clear on the part of our registrar for the regulatory body that we are professionals and we are accountable to the public by law. That was so starkly and beautifully stated that there's no wiggle room, right? So if someone decides to manipulate a client or somehow in some malevolent way harm them, there are consequences. And the consequences are very clear. In my province, we have a zero tolerance towards sexual abuse. So there have been people who have lost their registration because they have behaved in ways which were a little questionable, and now they can't practice. So that clarity with respect to sexual abuse and the importance of informed consent and critical reflection, all folding into research, I think that's one of the most essential changes. Because when I first started, we were still looking at the ACL.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Uh, you use a word there that I can't help but also bring up another question about identity. How have you seen a change in how massage therapy identify? Speaking of as service providers, professions, industry is another word that gets brought up often. Any thoughts on how massage therapists have identified through the years?
I personally don't see us as an industry, although I know that word has been used many, many times by many associations and individuals. That's not the way I see it because I think we are professionals with the fate of our clients' psyche in our hands. Even though we don't treat the psyche, people don't complain about whether or not we do good deportment. They complain about whether we have broken their trust or whether we have made them feel uncomfortable with the type of touch that we do. It's all around their psyche and their experience and their history. That requires a level of context and specific education that I would consider professional. So I call us professionals, not industry. It's not an industry, it's a profession. When we hold on to that professional designation, we protect ourselves, but also our clients from that service industry. The client gets to ask whatever they want and they get whatever they request. That there's a creepy, servile experience in that I don't subscribe to.
What an eloquent way to make an argument for profession and professionals. That was beautiful. I have to give you kudos and hold space for that for a moment. Holding their psyche without treating their psyche, and that they don't complain about the technique so much. They complain about how we make them feel. Wow. What a shift.
Yeah, that is the shift, right? That is the shift. And people recognize that. Clients know that now.
That's incredible. Thank you for that, Pam. That's perfect, actually, I think. I'm a sit with that for a while.
Okay.
What can today's practitioners benefit from an understanding of history in massage therapy? Has your understanding of massage therapy changed with a context of history to it? And also, what do you hope, because we brought up research, what do you hope perhaps might be on the forefront or in the future in terms of massage research and where history research could perhaps intersect?
Well, one of the things that I found really fascinating one day when I was attending a hospital here locally in my city, I saw on the wall a poster, and it was an old poster from the 1930s, like 37, I think it was dated.
Wow.
And it was talking about what massage would give you. And I realized in that moment from the poster that massage was done in the hospitals
Yeah.
because it was part of what you could get as a treatment if you were hurt. When antibiotics and big pharma came into play in the 50s, massage therapy sort of faded into a more private realm where it was one-on-one kind of treatment for people who knew enough to ask for it.
Right.
So, what has changed in the last 50 years, I would say? I've been involved in massage for just about 40 years here. So what has changed in that period is we've gone from massage being integral in the healthcare system to being reduced as a result of the big pharma and the medicalization of certain conditions and the drug industry. And now it's coming back. So people are saying, I don't want to take medication. I don't want to take drugs. And I'm not suggesting that they should avoid medication if it's in their best interest. But massage therapy is definitely appreciated as as a different form of caring for yourself. And clients are starting to recognize where to put that in the umbrella of care that they have for themselves. What do I hope for the future? I would like to see some demographic research, who's using our work and who can't access our work fundamentally. What are the barriers to access that we can imagine? I've often told my students, if you think massaging someone who has smelly feet is a problem, you should be a nurse. Guys, you're dealing with all kinds of body fluids and smells and stuff like that. We have the opportunity to learn a healthcare without really dealing with very messy clients. And there are so many people who could benefit from what we do. So that is an area that I find fascinating. I also am concerned with the huge mobility of immigration, refugees from all over the world moving everywhere. Every country is experiencing an influx of refugees because there are so many places in the world that are not safe. Their cultural experiences may include massage therapy, but they don't include massage therapy in the way it's delivered here.
Sure.
And the intersection between expectation, cultural norms in one part of the world to the way it's delivered and our expectations of how clients will behave. There's a huge knot societally and culturally there, which needs to be picked apart. And I would really, finally, I would like to go back to what has fueled my practice all these years, and that is to see really good research on some case series on working with people who have a history of trauma and what the impact of trauma-informed care for those clients can do for them. Does it reduce their need for medication? Does it reduce their need for going to the doctor? These indicators, which from a cost benefit analysis are going to create motivations for massage therapy to be lifted up as a profession. All of those things I think need to be looked at.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you a little bit more, and perhaps switching gears again, about because you've been involved in some research studies. Talk to me about how that started and kind of like what the process is. And also, you've also, if I'm not mistaken, been involved at least a little bit with the Massage Therapy Foundation, or at least attended some of their conferences, correct? And talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I attended all of the foundation conferences until the one this past April, unfortunately, wasn't feeling confident to cross the border. So
I don't blame you.
yeah, that's a terrible reality that we have to look at as Canadians. But in 2013, colleagues and I presented our findings in a poster, basically around the education of students about scars. How did learning about scars support their learning as massage therapists? So when I think it was 2009, I was the outreach coordinator in my school's program, so the community college program. And I had done a lot of work working with people who had scars, and I recognized how working with scars could change people's lives because scars are one of those situations where our body glues itself together and sometimes layers of tissue get stuck together and our range of motion might be offended or impacted.
Mhm.
So by releasing scars, you can change people's lives. If they couldn't do this before, now they can raise their arm up. With the women that I worked with, a large part of my scar work was with women who had had mastectomy. So if you think about the breast scars, there's no plane of movement across the chest. So quite often when they would have a full mastectomy, there would be no plane of movement. So the scar would get matted down on their chest wall. And releasing the scars meant reducing lymphedema in their arms and suddenly they would have more mobility in their upper body and could move and they felt more comfortable and more normal. So I wanted to bring that awareness to the students, and I created an outreach which we called the SCAR outreach, where we assigned a person who had a scar and they wanted work done on it to the students, and they would evaluate the scar for restriction, mobility, all, impaired function, that kind of thing, and then just figure it out. What was their treatment plan going to be for 6 weeks? So we had people with table saw injuries on their hands, or we had one individual who'd had bariatric surgery and had skin removed, excess skin. So that was a different kind of scar. We had someone who had been a kidney donor, and he had a scar in his chest where this kidney had been removed, and what the layers of scar tissue might be there. So there were many, many different kinds of scars. And we had one individual that had major burns, and he had third-degree burns all over his body, and he couldn't oppose his fingers because he had so much scar tissue. So anyway, a long story short, we had the students work with each of these individuals, and they would leave that SCAR outreach feeling like they could work with scars. They could ask questions about scars, and they felt competent to alleviate the restrictions because they started to realize that the mystery of scars was not that big a deal. It was a question of ungluing something. So a lot of the learning about massage therapy came together in this capstone experience. The SCAR outreach usually happen in the students' final term, so they were pulling together all of their knowledge. It could be that they needed to listen to their client tell their story. It might be that in listening to their story, they realized something else was going on that might be related to the scar at a further away. So my colleagues, Farbod Karimi and Marvin Mooring, and I presented a poster on what it was like for the students to learn how to do scar tissue massage therapy. And that was in 2013 that we presented. And yeah, we did a whole piece around education and massage therapy. And, there are all kinds of associated learnings in that kind of project that I could have continued writing about it a lot, but no, there were a lot of other things going on, so we didn't pursue it, but we presented in 2013. Yeah.
Let me ask you maybe another unfair question. Why scars?
Why not scars? Wait, what's the question behind your question? I'm curious.
Well, I think I always try to think of things, especially when talking in this in a historical context. What did you learn about scars perhaps in 1986 compared to where we've come to 2013?
I learned nothing about scars
Right. Yeah.
in my training. I learned nothing about scars. And I was doing a lot of work with women in the early 2000s and late 90s, and many of them had breast cancer as part of their story. And what I, you have to realize that as a massage therapist, there's so much of what I learned. I kind of learned because I didn't know who to ask, and the client's sitting in front of me, and I'm going, sure, I can help. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that was it. I just started working on scars and thought, oh, I like this because your touch is different than when you're working with the biomechanical release of the rest of the body. The scar tissue requires that you work very specifically, and you might be working in one little spot for 15 minutes. Ooh, I could sit when I was doing it. Oh, I could really get into it. It's the nerdiness in me just made it fascinating, and I could feel the scar releasing under my fingers, the listening hands kind of thing. Yeah, I just loved working with scars. So I worked with all manner of scars. I worked with a trumpet player one time who blew his lip,
Oh,
uh, and he couldn't play the trumpet anymore, but we were working on his lip to see if we could repair it. It could not. It was herniated and it was not going to get better. But that was, that was another learning. It was a tiny little scar on his lip. Couldn't blow a trumpet anymore, but just, I love it. I love that.
Interesting. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that because, some people would hear, working on a very small area, to some practitioners, that might sound torturous. To others like yourself, that sounds, I could sit, I could really explore. There's a lot to learn there, right? And also, thanks for sharing that about the trumpet player too, because how often do we spend working right there, even in passing, but to spend a concentrated amount of time there, wow,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
much.
and I didn't know anything about the buccal muscles and any of that, right? Like, so you have to go back and learn your anatomy and what's the force of the blowing through a trumpet at a very high, this individual is highly trained, and he just blew his lip. Like Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong blew his lip that way too.
Mm.
And he couldn't play after that. Yeah.
Mm. I want to ask, just to throw it out there, do you have any qualms with going back and learning again and cracking open the old textbook? And, I come across so many people perhaps that they feel like they get done with school and they know it all. They pretend, they just go with it. And perhaps they feel like, well, I've learned it all. What do I need to go back and study, go back to basics, so to speak?
Well, I'm ancient now, and relatively to the profession, I'm quite ancient. And it's a great, when we moved, I couldn't let go of my massage textbooks because I still look at them. I I would teach some of my clients using textbooks. I would pull out a picture and say, this looks like what you're describing to me. See this spot here. And we would talk through it. No, that's not quite it. It's more over there. So I still use books to learn. I still send clients videos if I find them useful. I still pay attention to what's going on. I love learning. It's yeah, lifelong learning is a bit of a passion for me.
Good. Excellent. That also brings up an interesting thought. Sometimes we live in a world where people are obsessed with the newest. Our way back, our second episode with David Lauderstein, he talks about the latest and greatest. And I'm just wondering, I love that you've held on to these textbooks. Some people think you can't learn anything from something old or, dare I say, ancient. But I just, what's your take on that?
Well, being somebody who loves books, you're preaching to the choir here, right? I love books. The latest and greatest, what I find really funny is there are many traditions that have been around for generations, and they get renamed. Somebody, things will sort of go out of favor or not be thought of, and then they come back and somebody does a slight tweak on them and they name them the Pam Fitch technique, blah, blah. I think that's really missing the point of what we do, because the capacity for our hands to learn, for our minds to resonate with what we do, well, it's history that's going to give us the perspective. But back to our earlier points, Kirby, I mean, people have to understand that history has a value. They're not going to think about it unless they value history, right? So,
I love that kind of cyclical because people aren't aware of it.
but
And
if they come back with cold diffusions, I am not putting my hand up. I am not. You cannot make me do that again. No,
back to the cold diffusions.
not doing it.
I
No.
love it. Let's move into some closing thoughts, Pam.
Okay.
Nearly 4 decades in massage therapy. When you take a moment to look back and pause and reflect, can I ask you, what are you most proud of?
What a good question. I think this is not a plug, but I think I'm most proud of the fact that I wrote a textbook about topics that most people don't have an easy way to communicate. So, professionalism, the therapeutic relationship, communications. I wrote a textbook on this, and when it came out, as far as I know, there's not another one like it. That's what I'm most proud of because it was the accumulation of all of my learning that I kind of threw into this book. Yeah, it's still being used. So that's exciting.
Well, hold on, Pam, because I don't shy away from plugs. Go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the text. As someone who loves books, and
Yes.
especially books that are unusual or perhaps one of one, I wish I had more time to read all of the books that I collect, right? But tell us, Pam, about the book.
Well, it's on my table because I'm working on a project right now. This is the book. I don't know if you can see it, but Talking Body, Listening Hands. To your point, Kirby, Listening Hands. This is part of the title of my book.
I love it.
Um, so it is basically a textbook that I wrote in two parts. The first part being four chapters for people who had never thought about those topics before: professionalism, communication, then therapeutic relationship. And the second part is for people who are experiencing deeply complicated client presentations and they don't know what to do with. There's a lot of massage therapists, for example, who have encountered clients who have malevolent intentions where they're concerned and they're at risk. So there's a chapter around that sort of issue. There are a couple of chapters on trauma because that's what got me started writing the book. There's a chapter on end of life considerations for clients who are experiencing death and dying. And, where do you go with all of that? One of the things that I've been pushing like crazy for massage therapists to do is to find mentors and peer supervisors because when we deal with our clients, things come up. And it's not about basic orthopedic things. It's not knowing how we're going to treat the person's body. It's interpersonal challenges. And what do we do with that? That textbook was the culmination of, oh God, decades of mistakes. I have made every mistake in the book, quite literally. And and I and I gathered the perspectives from many other therapists. So there are therapist stories in there and client stories, and that feels like a major accomplishment.
I bet. When did you first write the book? When did the first edition?
The first edition came out in 2013, and the second edition came out in 2019. So,
It's a book. What I've learned is that is a huge undertaking, and definitely, I would definitely something to be proud of, I think.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered? Is there a question I haven't asked in this interview that perhaps I should have?
I don't think so. I think you've asked me every question nobody's ever asked me before.
I'm glad you dry, Pam. I'm sure there is a lot more that I could wring out of you.
Oh man, great conversation. Thank you.
Yes, I think so too. This has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. Last couple of closing thoughts then. If you could record and preserve any deceased person's account of massage history, who would you choose?
Wow. Wow. I think it would be fascinating to hear Roosevelt's experience of massage because having had polio, he would have been treated with massage.
Yeah.
And Eleanor Roosevelt also would have been treated with massage. Curious to know if Louis Armstrong ever had anybody work on his lip after it blew it.
Yeah.
I think there are some singers and performers that I'd love to hear whether they actually ever had massage therapists. But But fundamentally, the people that I have been thinking about most are the ones that have either been clients of mine or, people in history, not so much, but people that I don't know who have talked about the importance of massage therapy. I would like to spend some time hearing more about that, but I don't really have a good answer for you.
I think those are wonderful answers. Because you learn a lot from our clients, right? Um,
Mm,
so yeah, I can definitely relate to having clients on the mind.
mm.
All right. Similarly, who would you encourage or challenge to participate in this podcast's future episodes? If you could put anyone in the hot seat you're in right now, who should we talk to next?
There's probably three names I would give you. They're all Canadian. One is Danelda Gowan Moody. She's in Saskatchewan. I can send you her link. Amanda Basquill and Trish Dryden. So Trish Dryden and I worked in massage therapy. She was in the regulatory side of things. I was on the association side of things. And we eventually discovered that we were working very similarly around trauma. And
Mm,
Trish has been retired for a while, but she was the mover and shaker in massage therapy in the 80s and 90s. There's no question. She established, with the help of a couple of other people, she worked on the establishment of a program in massage therapy at one of the community colleges in Toronto, Centennial College. And she is a remarkable individual and did so much in trauma. So she's one. Dr. Amanda Basquill is teaching at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and she was mentored by Trish Dryden, went to Centennial College, and as a student just showed so much promise and commitment to research that she went on to do her master's degree and then her PhD. And she's done some remarkable massage therapy research. Very worthwhile checking in with Amanda. And no, she's not at McMaster anymore. She's dean in St. Lawrence College. I'll get you the contact information.
okay.
And Donelda Gowan Moody, also a PhD candidate, did a lot of work around massage therapy and research and critical reflection. So those three people couldn't get better individuals, I would think.
Awesome. I love number one that they're all women, and I love number two that they're all Canadian. I've really enjoyed the conversations that I've had with our neighbors to the north up in Canada. I think I could party with y'all a little bit. So I love those conversations.
Well, if you ever want to come all the way from Arkansas to Canada, you let me know, okay?
Oh, let me ask you perhaps another selfish question, if we can be quick about it. How did you get involved in the international travel and teaching in the States? When did that come
I,
about?
I lived in Hong Kong for 2 years and I taught in Hong Kong, and that was over the 99 to 2001. I taught in Hong Kong a little bit. And so that introduced me to Australian ways of thinking, and I met some Australian therapists and I met some UK therapists. And then when I came back, I was on a number of committees, which put me in a position of representing the profession internationally. And so then I would end up at a conference and talk to somebody, and they would talk to somebody else, and they'd say, "Could you do this thing?" And sure. So I'm one that has trouble saying no. Those two letters just don't seem to, they don't fit in my vocabulary. So I'm always saying yes to things. And once you start saying yes, people realize, oh, she might be an interesting person to have a conversation. I remember one chat, I went to the American Massage Therapy Foundation Research Conference many years ago, and I was just so jazzed by oh my God, it was just like, I thought, these are my peeps. They didn't know me from Adam. So there's Janet Kahn is there, and Trish was there, and Patricia Benjamin, and Deborah Curtis, and a bunch of different people, Diana Thompson. And at one point they had a floor mic, and I got up to the floor mic, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the most amazing. I remember Diana Thompson was behind me. She was like, who are you anyway? Because who are you and why are you so excited about all of this stuff? And I just remember being slightly embarrassed about being so enthused in front of all of these major icons in massage therapy research. But yeah, we've all gotten to know each other since then.
That's
They
excellent.
know it's part of how I roll. Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that in doing this podcast series. This is just really an awesome opportunity. So I definitely can feel with you there. Don't ever be ashamed of being excited either, especially not about massage and massage practitioners. I think they're awesome.
Kirby, have you invited Janet Kahn to speak?
I don't believe so.
someone you should talk to.
Okay. All right.
She has been working at the NHS. I don't know, no, NIH is the American. NIH, I don't know if she's still there, but she was living in Vermont. And Janet, I can't tell you all the things that she's been involved with, but she's been involved with research in ways that are just remarkable. And Ruth Werner and Diana Thompson and all of these major iconic names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get a conversation with Janet then. All right. Tell me, what do you have coming up next? How could listeners or viewers get in contact or at least learn more about you, Pam?
They can go to my website. Right now, I'm finishing up part two on an AMTA Con Ed course that I did part one last year for AMTA, and I'm just finishing part two. And because I'm pretty much semi-retired, I just go where people ask me to go and attend, like podcasts that people ask me to come and talk. I do that. And so I don't have a big schedule of workshops and that kind of thing. When people ask me, I'm still interested in teaching, but I'm not pursuing at this point because I'm ancient. So, that's the way it is. You get to a certain point and you go, I'll wait till they ask me. Meanwhile, I'll just ride my bike.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you have well earned that semi-retirement.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Thanks.
And Kirby, do you want me to send you some stuff?
Yeah, I'd
Like,
love to. Yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever you're thinking.
okay, I'll go through my bookshelves and see what I can let go of.
Please do anything you're willing to part with.
Tell me if you have a copy of Tidy's Massage.
I don't think I do. I'd have to like double check but that's one of those. You said several names that I don't know if it's a American
Yeah,
Canada thing or if it's just a generational.
they're ancient. Okay, I'll send you what I've been wondering how I could let go of these, and I only want to let them go if there's a place for them to live. So I'm happy to. Are they all just going to live in your basement?
Not forever. That's the situation where it is right now. So if you would also feel more comfortable waiting until we have some, but it is a goal for us. We want to have some place where these things can live, where they can be cared for. We'd love to eventually someday further down the line hire an actual archivist and someone that a curator. I mean, like we have these wild dreams. We're just not there yet. We're trying to get more people on board and invested.
Good for you. Congratulations for all the work that you've done. It's just remarkable.
Well, thanks, Pam. We feel like there's like for the little, it's like an ice for the little bit that we've done, we feel like there's way so much more that
Yeah,
needs to be
I bet.
accomplished. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, excellent. I'm so glad. I kind of went into this, somewhat blind, but I think this has been a really wonderful conversation, and I'm so honored for you sharing your time with us and your perspective, your insights, Pam.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking. I've never had quite so many questions like you asked me. Wow, out of the box. Thank
That's what we're striving for here. Something new, something fresh, something undiscovered in massage therapy with the society. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.